Hello. We're going to get started. So, me and Daryl are both on the board of AWP, and we're also Cave Canem Fellows, so it's lovely that we are both here at this time. A few opening remarks. Welcome to the 2024 Annual Conference and Book Fair in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm Kenyatta Rogers.
And I'm Daryl Alejandro Holness.
We're both members of AWP Board of Directors. Quick visual description of myself. I'm a 6'2" black man with locks, with my Cave Canem shirt, repping real proudly, wearing a black sweater, blue jeans, and some Jordans.
And I am a 5'11" and a half Afro-Panamanian poet wearing a black jacket, a blue and white striped shirt, and Nikes.
The Association of Writers and Writing Programs is a small but mighty nonprofit organization that amplifies the voices of writers and academic programs and organizations that serve them, all while championing diversity and excellence in creative writing. We are members of the AWP Board of Directors, but first and foremost, we are both members of AWP. Membership with AWP provides both of us with writing resources year-round, but just as importantly, it allows us to support other writers, especially those who are just starting out. Our membership dues help writers find meaningful careers and publication opportunities and make services like the Writer-to-Writer Mentorship Program and the AWP HBCU Fellowship Program possible. If you aren't already, I invite you to become a member today.
As Kenyatta mentioned, we are proud members of the Cave Canem community. We are fellows, and Cave Canem is a nonprofit organization committed to cultivating the artistic and professional growth of Black poets. Founded by artists for artists, Cave Canem fosters community across the diaspora to enrich the field by facilitating a nurturing space in which to learn, experiment, create, and present. Cave Canem develops audiences for Black voices that have worked and are working in the craft of poetry.
We're delighted to bring you this event. I'd like to acknowledge and thank all of our conference sponsors and our literary sponsor, Cave Canem, for hosting this event. Our literary partners and sponsors allow AWP to present these extraordinary literary events and help us keep our conference affordable and accessible. Please help me in thanking all of our conference sponsors and partners for their support, and Cave Canem, which is always home and family to me. Everyone, a round of applause.
Now, before we start, I do need to do some brief housekeeping. Please silence your cell phones. Remember, there is no flash photography allowed during the presentation. Respect seats marked as reserved for attendees with accessibility needs. Please give the authors about 10 minutes after the presentation to get to the book signing table before approaching them to have your book signed. Lastly, we ask that you please be aware of your fellow attendees who may have disabilities and help AWP be more accessible. Specifically, if you see a barrier to accessibility, let us know by calling or texting our accessibility hotline, 240-269-6635. Please also be aware of those with invisible disabilities and do not question someone's use of an accommodation. Thank you. And now it's my great pleasure and honor to welcome Ramika Bingham Risher, who will introduce this fantastic event.
Hey, folks. I was wondering where y'all was at. Thank y'all. This is a dream. Just a little bit about how this came to be, but really how the work that we're going to discuss here came to be personally for me. We are living in critical times. And despite what people imagine, there are myriad ways to tell the truth. Though many are intent on lying about origins, genocide, how a book can breed empathy for those mothers and children and great uncles and individuals who are lumped into an amalgam of growing numbers in any nation at any given time. The truth is, the nature of the archive is to consider us invisible. Archive has its etymology in the Greek, arche, government, and to archaea, public record. In the government public record of this nation, Black women are often a first name and age in a property ledger, chancery records, apron strings following, the people against, hand-to-hand inheritance, freedmen, intake, domestic, daughter of, wife of, here lies. So you've left us no choice but to raise the dead. In my newest work, Room Swept Home, that came out 2 whole days ago, in this work, I begin with a question overheard in a line wrapped around the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. I was waiting there with my husband and children the first year it opened, and a woman asked loud and incredulously, I mean, what is left to say about slavery? So I started the work. And I was reading all of the women here as I was starting this work. So I piled my own questions onto that ugly heap. Room Swept Home is about 2 of my grandmothers. One, my 3rd great-grandmother, a paternal grandmother on my father's side. Minnie Folks was interviewed for the WPA Slave Narratives while she was living in Petersburg, Virginia in 1941. And my maternal grandmother, Mary Knight, was taken to the Central Lunatic Asylum for the Colored Insane in 1941 in Petersburg, Virginia. They were within 1 mile of each other and didn't know it. And when I heard that as a poet, come on. There's no way that we can't write their lives and the stretched train of folks who ushered us in. So why a hybrid text? Why crowns and lists and letters and photos and maps and prose and family trees? Because we have been compelled to recreate everything. Black women's living, all our living, is expansive, and I needed every edge and every corner to rail against erasure, as do these women. We are building our existence and tending history as we know it to be, not as it has been handed to us, as a plate with slivers and sharpened bones. No green, no meat. But we're here to set the table, to stir the pot. I mean, we're here to eat. So people will call you asking your grandmothers and your aunts and your cousins to sit with you and remember all those dang questions that you keep throwing at them. They'll call it ethnography. They'll use giant leaps of the tongues to say, here is a way to refuse forgetting. And this is also bloodletting, this going back into the things most want to forget. But a Black radical love ethic, which I am intent on building, upholding, is a noun and a verb, a way of being and a creative act. We are living in critical times, and the truth is, I wanted a book that was centered on beauty, even though it had to begin in sadness. I wanted a book that those who'd been intentionally kept from words might still make some sense of. I wanted a book my grandson and I could flip through together like a family album. I wanted a book that compels one to look and listen again and again. These hybrid texts, these are our families. Materials preserved, a new medium we're tending with deft hands. We are writing ourselves back into the record, refusing to be willfully forgotten, assembling our own histories. So let's read some poems, shall we? All right. As I said, many folks is my grandmother, who was interviewed for the WPA slave narratives. She was actually interviewed in 37, but lived until 45, so that's how she found herself in the same places as my other grandmother, Mary Knight, in 41. As I started doing this research, I found documents in the archives that I didn't even know existed, and that were helpful at times, like the Virginia Slave Births Index. I mean, encyclopedias at the Library of Virginia, whole walls full of these indices. And what I started noticing going down them is every slave was born on Christmas. It's a very strange, a very strange lie, obviously. And so I wrote Minnie's birth story. I wasn't born on Christmas, though this is what some folks will tell you. Some folks say everyone born slave was born on Christmas or New Year's Day. Some folks always lying. Some pretend we don't know how we got here or when, but I am made of memory and the impossible long hour. I cherish every part that was mine or my mother's, and she'd tell you too. I came into the world with the sun bearing its full heat, the day as steady as the pain. She sweat through the pallet of hay on the floor. The dirt and rocks felt like coals underneath her. A friend there, rooted, a woman I'd call aunt for years, gray-headed and firm, had a guiding hand the children knew to follow. Pressed on the belly, held mother's hips in place, helped her stand when laying down wouldn't move me, found grease to ease me out with the water and blood, and I remember what my mother said the woman told me, God brought you here. God made you free. Jesus was born outdoors on a night when the shepherds slept in the field, free from frost, no snow. Christmas wasn't his day either, but someone somewhere saw fit to give him what they thought he deserved, what suited them. Save the truth for later. Thank you. Many went on to live a life filled with love and children. There were plenty of things to weep about as well. But one thing that I found, she's a woman who didn't learn to read, or if she did, it was very, very late in her life, but ran a successful business, owned acres and acres of land that she eventually sold and built a teacher's town of black teachers. And what kept coming back in my research and family history is the way the women in this community cared for each other. And it reminded me that we don't see enough poems about the friendships of women. So this is the tenderness of one woman for another. There was little play when I was a child. I shared secrets with no one, had no dress-up clothes or bows. I missed other little girls then. My daughters were my dolls, spitting up and weary of sleep. I was so grateful when the women came and took the crying babies from my arms, took my wash and scrubbed my kitchen to sparkling. I could barely lift my head. I was so tired, but they laid their hands on me. We our own assembly. Passing victuals, counting heads and nickels, bragging on children come by birth or fortune, loving folks' dirt, harboring it along with light, slapping our thighs when the telling gets good. We are happy to grow old together, to cross the changing streets, to be near each other, though our floorboards have worn thin. They sat watch with me when my husband was dying. After, though the sun was going and they'd worn their good shoes, stooped down in the dirt behind the house to weed and clear the garden. In my final years, changed my bedclothes, brought willow bark and ginger, said a soft prayer, tied the healing string in knots until the moaning stopped, then took a comb to my hair. Thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna shift a little bit to the other grandmother that gets a large section of this book. So Mary Knight, who was my maternal grandmother who lived until 2007, who I was holding her hand when she passed. She was 18 and taken to the Central Lunatic Asylum 9 days after her first child was born. Postpartum was an ongoing mystery then. And she lived to 84, just like many, and had a bountiful life. But I'll start at the beginning of that incident. Mary, taken to the Central Lunatic Asylum. She will jump, she says. She no longer cares for the child after the fire of the mind has taken her clothes and shoes, her pious tongue, and thrown them into the street. The suffering grows in her, settles in her belly like snuff, and nothing comes as it should. Not a groan or holler, not the doctor on time, just the child mangling everything, and after, no blood. 2 stories up, she warns everyone, the power and the spirit are coming. And when she gets a hold of the underside of her husband's skin, taking it with her over the steep ledge, with her newborn screaming in the distance between them, the siren choir approaching with its fire and wings, her husband is dumbstruck when they ask if she is herself, while she curses him, swearing in a rage, the words coming like spirit, her fists moving as fast as the mind, and everyone at arm's length, bloodied and weary, until she is handcuffed and sped away. God willing, she says to her husband, and something indecipherable as he signs the large green ledger, finally reverent, admitting the God who led him here, who transfigured and loosed another, not unlike herself, a body outside her body, coming in another name. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. I appreciate y'all. Y'all can come back anytime. Y'all keep clapping. Listen, I'm going to close with a poem about the end of Mary's life. These are just their bookends, so I would love it if you would look into their lives and the lives of the women who created so many of us. But at the end of her life, I told you she died in 2007. If you'll remember back, James Brown dies December right before. And so this is a poem about what's true. Mary admires James Brown's casket. Pure gold. I ain't seen nothing like it. Clean. Y'all put me away like that, horses and all. My aunts, my cousins, my mother, and I laugh and laugh and laugh in the nursing home. And where the money coming from, I ask. She looks stern at me. All that education, you got plenty money. But this is false hope. I have student loans. I have dreams. I will have debt forever. She raised 7 children, had a husband cancer killed 30 years before. No pension, no land, no inheritance. We're stuck where we are. I hate to tell her. Shh, James don't know what kind of casket he's in. I say instead, as we watch his carriage pass the Apollo. But everybody knew he was something special, she says. The throngs of brown hands reaching to touch what's left of a complicated life. We will dress her in flowers and ivory not 1 month later. I'll find her pearls and matching shoes. My cousin will curl her hair, color her lips. We will spend too much money for the steel blue casket. My mother will go as far as the graveside until she collapses. If the world isn't mourning, we surely won't know it. At the repast, we'll play It's a Man's World. Everyone will shake their heads and sing the chorus. People come from everywhere. The house is overflowing. She was really something, they'll say. Y'all put her away real nice, looked just like herself. No one calls her the help. Most of the night, no one's studying me. I stay in the kitchen, clean every dish, kiss every cheek, sweep the crumbs, wipe down the counters. I work to keep the living going in our growing weary hours. I thank y'all. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Thank you. Up next, Courtney Faye Taylor.
So honored to be here with these women whose work moves my work. Thank you to Cave Canem, AWP. I'm going to share some poems from Concentrate, and I think of it as a memorial to Black girlhood, a celebration of Black girlhood. I'm particularly interested in the life of Latasha Harlins. She was a Black girl living in South Central Los Angeles in the early 90s, and in March of 1991, she enters Empire Liquor Market, a corner store in her neighborhood, to buy a bottle of orange juice. And the shopkeeper there, who's a Korean-American woman named Sujadu, assumes she's trying to shoplift this juice. And the two of them have an altercation at the front counter. And at the end of it, Latasha leaves the juice on the counter, turns to leave, but Sujadu shoots her in the back of the head, and she dies instantly in the store. And when the police arrive, they find $2 bills crumpled in her hand. And so I'm interested in her life as a mirror to my life, as a symbol of the precarity of Black girlhood, but also how this murder comes to kind of define the relationship between Black and Asian American communities in the US. So far, my sentence as a Black woman has been hard to hone, homed in sore white pith. Put graciously, Black womanhood has been a limb that's fallen asleep beneath me. Paddy wagon of spinal cords in Baltimore's traffic up ahead. This whole color was a mistake. A leak in the ceiling whorehouse. A confused ass whooping. You see the baby in the blinds, the eager run in nylons, a public school lisp making room for the velour of her name. I was one of them in grade school. It seemed my whole class had fallen asleep in front of a microwave. I drew faces on my galas, then ate them off. God to me was my distantly gentle Aunt Notary, brilliant completely, Virginia Slims and breadsticks, the shade on her side of Brewster slouched the coolish way a suburb deserves. Sunday she was an usher with one breast. I crept to mom and pop's where bells above doors snitched to mention my entrance, but I told them bells. I was toys to be bothered. I had made such toyish mistakes. In any Black sentence, you'd love nothing more than to have made no mistakes. This next piece is an excerpt from an essay. What precedes this is another part where I talk about an experience I had as a tutor in college. And I once tutored a student who had written an essay about what it was like to move from South Korea to the United States. And she mentions how disappointed she was to realize how many Black people were in the US, and it wasn't a reflection of what she had seen on TV. A timeline details a seriousness of events. As a diagram of occurrence, a timeline's chief objective is to show how past happenings caution and contaminate our contemporary sense of momentum. A professor may author timelines to teach what precedes and follows genocide. On the overhead, Rwanda is a centipede with its head in Belgium and tail on stage of the '05 Oscars. In our text, the Bodo League massacre is an annotated string I spill grits on to suffocate the start, the blood count, the South. Easing on down the Eastern Hemisphere's lines of time, the decline of non-white worlds may fervently thaw on me. It may dawn on your girl with a sense of tension, that democracy is a phenomenon of withholding things, crossing legs, clenching assholes, silencing radios, pinning lips. But rather than events, I want timelines to detail a sermon of interactions. On my 2T's line would be interactions had with Hollywood, and so interactions had with the American art of erasure. Likewise, on my timeline, interactions with Aunt Notary and so, interactions with retail. Between her knees, I receive cornrows and corner store warnings. Tales of Iquas and Ishas entering shops without sensation, hands out their pockets, hands off the shelves, hands to heaven-high fluorescence. Girls who know what to buy before going inside because we don't survive the browsing. Between Auntie's knees, I shop while black. I interact with racism without having to have its trojans twerking the roof of my mood quite yet. My interactions with that imminent ism secondhand. So I'm drawing a line. On it, each tick mark represents an interaction Latasha Harlins and Sujadu had with Empire Liquor Market through the experience of someone else. Secondhand horrors, all before the bell above the door snitched to mention their entrance on March 16th, 1991. Direct your heartbreak to a tick representing Latasha's Uncle Richard, who manned Empire's register in June of 1990. Latasha, having interacted with her uncle, must have interacted with his working hardship. He was hawk-watched on shifts, monitored on trips to the restroom. One day, Mr. Dew even demanded he work overtime with no pay. You supposed to work for free. Do what black people are supposed to do. Uncle says avoid them spots that stalk with mirrors and feet. Latasha could avoid some stalkings, but avoid them all? Avoiding them all could mean a mean vitamin C deficiency. There are timelines in the book that kind of mark these important events that surround Latasha's murder. I'm going to end with two poems that are situated on those timelines. This one is March 16th, 1991. At the scene, the Angels PD urged Mr. Dew, "Sir, lower your hand." During the death, Mr. Dew was asleep in the family van. The bark of the shot, the snitch of surveillance, it conceives Ali, butterfly bee under which Suja dissolves. Knuckles were no foreign performance in their marriage. In mine, wife beaters yank back my wig caps all the time. Above each assault, white Jesus lit his Lucy, and I became the cameraman involved. All I could think was Ellis the Island and Mamie the Mast, a ton in our shooting deaths. Blood orange and blood of baby girl whiffed up from the sill, both swearing in patois and smelling lilac good. But then Jesus ashed his cig and clocked out of his shift. He no longer needed women of color to make his point about obedience. He had mammograms and Candyman for that. A city's number one killer of people is people who are obedient to their senses, sense outlawed. Now, wouldn't that be trife? Jesus would need us so pathetically then. But in any life, it's never my business why the Savior is the color of a wedding dress and not tap shoes. I'll have my book of light and he'll have his. For killing anyone, he and mammograms have their lofty reasons and our men have theirs, tenderized as they are. But any afterlife, a paradise, is no killer of colored girls even when pushed. The skies of that sort of nirvana are innocent and inconsolable as we laze forward, inventing simultaneous gods to save us. Ornery gods of pansex, midterms, safe medications. We create gods without histories, without which they are made only of air and belief, no punishment. March 1991 to June 1995. Latasha's gravesite in Paradise Memorial Park may have been disturbed in a slew of unearthings initiated by the cemetery proprietors in the 90s. If so, she was exhumed and flung onto a mound with other bone-black remains. The location of the pile is unknown to me, though you know it's a way of reselling plots, of making space for the lucrative business of dying. You know cemeteries know better. You know where this cemetery stay. You got bones to suck the marrow out of when it comes to any paradise. Paradise shouldn't be the name of no cemetery. There are no cemeteries in Paradise, the novel. Men shiv women in a convent, and when it's time to pile the bodies, our bodies are nowhere to be disturbed. No air, no punishment. Paradise. Thank you.
Bettina Judd.
Thank you. I am so indebted to everyone on this stage and so humbled and grateful to be here. First with Patricia Smith, who was facilitator my first year at Cave Canem. That poem was in the first book. And Ramika's interviews and work on Lucille Clifton that very much animated this book project. And Courtney, I think you're about to save my life. Latasha Hollins was so a pivotal figure from my Black girlhood in Los Angeles in 1990, 91. I'm reading from my recent book, Feeling, Creative Practice, Pleasure, and Black Feminist Thought. Feel me. In the delirium of a felt life is the made thing, and making a thing worth feeling for. I lose myself in the frenzied, raptured, called life, can attest to having felt, and in that heightened state of life, create. The evidence of creation means that I came out on the other side of rapture, and yet I am still in it. We now, me, you, reader, viewer, listener, are still in it, even as I may have moved on to the next thing. If I know anything, I know how to bend time this way. The pen, the flickering cursor, the soft flesh in the throat, and its sound, the pastel's residue on my oily fingertips, my small bit of power the universe has given. Living with arduous time, global pandemics, war, genocide, extinctions and destruction of habitable lands and water, one could ask if artistic creation matters at all, if creative practice is frivolous, ornamental, or in poor taste. To a question like this, I offer the poet's response in Ntozake Shange's Lizard series. She says, "That's why poetry is enough, Issa. It brings us to our knees, and when we look up from puddles of sweat, the world's still right there, and the children still have bruises, tiny white satin caskets, and their mothers weep like Mary shoulda. There is nothing more sacred than a glimpse of power in the universe. It brought James Brown to his knee, Lil Anthony too, even Jackie Wilson, arrogant pretty motherfucker he was, dropped no knee pads in the face of the might we have to contend with. And sometimes young Black boys bleed to death face down on asphalt, because falling to our knees is a public admission to the great big old scarlet letter that we don't want to escape any feeling, any sensations of being alive can come right down on us. And yes, my tears and sweat may decorate the ground like a Veve in Haiti or a sand drawing in Melbourne, but in the swooning and the delirium of a felt life lies a poem to be proud of. Does it matter? Can you stand up, child? That's Ntozake Shange, that on me. Well, how does it feel? How does it feel to live amid global disaster? What do you know of it? Disaster is here, has been here, will be here even as we all toe up along with it. To run from feeling is to attempt to run from disaster itself. And exactly where are you going anyway? As the late Nina Simone said in a moment of grief for the very recent loss of Dr. Martin Luther King, quote, "Folks, you better stop and think and feel again," end quote. For it is not the feeling that is frivolous, but the avoidance of that feeling that orders destruction, makes it unremarkable, ordinary, and truly, even if you don't feel, feeling is likely to catch you no knee pads in the face. This book is interested in how Black women artists take up our glimpse of power in the universe, how creativity makes its way through feeling and what we can know with the work left behind. I talk about many feelings here in the book, but today I will talk about two: grief and joy. Is there sound?
Laura, your daughters and nieces, your granddaughter, your girls are holding your hands, and you are not here. After the whirring of machines, after the pastor, the doctors, after the men leave the room, we bend over in that same void where spirit hovers to tell you that we listened. We love you. We shape our gate to yours, and you could shed this flesh if you need to. Thank you. Thank you. Je t'aime, adieu. Be sure to hear this as you go, how we are emptied and made full with gratitude through gnashing teeth and salted lips, every well-wish, true and spiteful.
For Dr. Katina Judd. This is grandmother. I'm sorry we missed you when you came in. We hadn't talked with you to let you know that we had to change the bottom lock on the door because we couldn't lock it. But we do have a key here for you. We're sorry we missed you. Sorry you made the trip over for nothing. But we hope that you can come in at a time, and we'll probably, if we know when you're coming, we'll leave the top lock on because you can still use that key on the top lock. And we'll give you a key for the bottom lock whenever we get in touch with you. I pray that everything is going well with you, and you can call us whenever you feel up to it. Pray that all is well. God bless you. We love you.
Joy. Joy. I have to ask, and perhaps you can feel the despair with which I write this. How can I choose joy in times like these when the world is ending? How can joy be a practice when I just ruminated on the ways that Blackness is inured by grief? And what of the very personal losses that overwhelm? What of the loss that serves as the weather of our lives, and how do we feel through that? Lucille Clifton's spirit writing in Midrash demonstrates an adherence to and development of a spiritual creative practice that is informed by both a religious background and a metaphysical belief. This pantheist spirituality and her creative practice allows Clifton to grapple with a theological question with a more robust set of tools than biblical text alone. Writing is a technology by which Clifton is able to explore the mysterious and perplexing problems of good and evil. And this, I'm again grateful to the work of Ramika and actually Cherie Pollard, who might be here, Lucille Clifton's A Theology of Joy demonstrates how felt knowledge is multidimensional and resists binary nodes of categorizing lived experience. Joy, exclamation point, if you know, is political because it operates in the everyday survival of a Black woman. When she discusses writing about the whole of a life with Michael Glaser, Lucille Clifton is talking about the complexity of human experience. When she talks about writing the whole of What I Am with Charles Roll, she is speaking about the complexity of her experience in her work. And when she refers to herself as a grown woman and her poems as grown woman poems, she was referring to her sexuality and experience as a Black woman. In Joy, exclamation point, Lucille Clifton claims life for herself in the face of the somethings that try to kill her daily. These somethings would aim to kill all manner of lived experience that could be named in joy despite it all. As she says, the warm veil of sheet and sweat after love, pleasures for which Eve risked it all. Thank you.
Robin Cost Lewis will be joining us online.
Hi, everyone. I was hoping I didn't have to go next because I don't know how I'm supposed to talk. I'm overcome. Hello, all four of you. I just wish I could be holding you right now and listening to you guys and thinking about your work. I am an apprentice to most of the women on this stage, the remarkable books they've written, the remarkable projects they've engaged. I've studied you, as you all know, for years. So it's a deep honor, but I'm also overwhelmed. So I'm going to try to hold it together. Like everyone else, thank you, AWP. Thank you, Kaveh Khanum, always. And Ramika, thank you for your insight. It is a rare thing to have multidisciplinary artists and interdisciplinary scholars who are Black women gathered together to present our work. I don't think I've ever seen this ever happen in my whole lifetime, and I'm bumping 60. So it's a rare occurrence to be here for this topic and in particular to do it together. So I too am just going to read, or else I'll start crying too. The book I'm reading from is, I'll just hold it up, is To the Realization of Perfect Helplessness. We can talk about the title later, but I'll just flip through really quickly. It's a private archive that I inherited accidentally from my grandmother, and this is about a third of it. And I was really adamant about making a private archive public for you. And my press, Knopf, the book cost twice as much to make as we did to sell it. So it was a complete labor of love from beginning to end, and it took about 25 years for me to finish. I'm going to read, there's a long poem at the beginning. I'm going to read just a section of it. It's a poem I wrote for Julie Moretu, and it's, I think it engages, I'm trying to suggest that this notion of diaspora that we have, or more particularly this notion of historical time that we agree to, can I just curse? It's bullshit. And 400 years, we can never fit into our histories, our bodies, what they contain, what they know. Black people I'm talking about, but all diasporic peoples could never fit into the myth and manufactured calendar of the Judeo-Christian clock, and most particularly Christian, the Christian calendar, i.e. we existed for millennia long before 1619. So this is a few lines from this long experimental poem where I'm actually trying to turn around the colonial habit of caption that explains the image and have the image caption the poem. I think they thought at some point that I would come back home. I think I thought so too. Do the tambourines miss us? Signs and marks and nothing with which to apprentice them. Evolution, the migration of imagination, the image just illusion, a profound prehistoric technology of leaving. Minute anchors, something to hold on to, not rational, a private moment, no air, the evolution of human beings making marks, the paintings watching us, an army of black holes advancing. The very, very first person, the very first human beings, the ones who crossed over long before the Ice Age, before the last 3 ice ages, before the ones before that, too. Must we see ourselves in the water? Must the water be still? The bar is lower than the broom. And didn't we know all this was going to happen? Didn't we feel it all those decades ago, standing together talking on the sidewalk? I remembered you then, not from the past, but from a bright inkling inside my body that some would later call the future. Some part of me expected you, knew you would arrive, fearless, open, hungry, faceless, and how the words felt in our mouths then, all those small-minded Englishes we refused to speak, all the countless blacknesses we could. The body was the archive. Desire was our breastplate. A history of alienation, perhaps. Perhaps I just needed to see the future taken off the table. Devotees of Black absence, disciples of the immeasurable. I don't want to be found. Like the ochre paint you left for me sitting and waiting inside an abalone shell 73,000 years ago. Time. A little girl running backwards, wearing a bark dress. What, then, is a moment? Embodiment, when there is no other word to say but yes. Yes. Intimacy, cell to cell. Do you ever wonder who made the first brick, the first needle, the first spoon? I was on the ark with you. I was the hull. I was the flood, too. So that's an excerpt from the, thank you. That was an excerpt from the first long poem. There are 2 long poems. The second long poem is called The Ark, and it's about my very dead husband, Matthew Henson, who is a brilliant Arctic explorer and Black man, and most likely discovered the North Pole. And as these women's projects and work has attested to, you know, it took decades for us to even consider that. And thank you to all the historians who have been steadily resurrecting Matthew Henson's name from the ice. One day, I come out onto a street in New York. A very old man is on the sidewalk selling antique maps. I smile. I walk up to him. Sir, do you have any of the Arctic? His eyes look into mine more deeply now. For 1 second, we make love. The way strangers who are not really strangers, they have just never met before, touch each other deep inside with their eyes. Of course I do, darling, he says in a thick and gorgeous Urdu accent. But he hesitates and holds up his one index finger. I have only one. We smile at each other. We are suddenly in love and we understand our whole affair from beginning to end will take place right here between our words for only these few moments. I look at the map. On a small sheet of paper, there are two frames. The North Pole is on the top, the South Pole on the bottom. All the water is white. The scattered lands are green. Besides the fine black print, these are the only colors. In large bold letters across the middle of both poles is the word unexplored. Later, I will think how like this map I am. The top and bottom of me, both so unknown. My most essential pivots, uncharted yet toggling in perfect geometry. My heart, a country called Greenland, yet always covered in ice. My brain, an Iceland, but greener than every sea. Prehistoric elephants embedded beneath my skin, along with carved ivory ornaments 10,000 years old that belonged to me when I was someone's wife during the last ice age. Always something in me freezing harder, while another part insists on melting. And then this equator in the middle of my body, so hot, so lush, I can visit, but only for a day. I buy the map. It is $15. The man and I smile at each other as his face is a whole flock of starlings which suddenly alights upon me. Me, bare winter tree. In 1 minute, we have lived 50 years together. In 1 minute, we have had 10 children. I have tended a goat and brought him a cup of his frothy milk. He has covered my head with a white muslin scarf, then stood beside me while we cremated my father. We've grown gray together. I have loved his body and mind thoroughly. I say goodbye. I rub red ochre into the middle part of my hair. I throw garlands of marigolds into his casket before the moment closes the lid. And then I'm going to read a short poem. It's the last poem in the book called Navel. And I want to dedicate it to the panel participants and all the Cave Canem people, fellows in the audience. Hi, you guys. I really miss you. I miss you deeply. It's so good to see you. It's so good. Navel. We crawled out of her navel one by one, then waited until we were all here. That lucid moment when the last wet child learned to stand, we began walking. We walked slowly. We took some time. We took more than that. When we began to grow hungry, some offered to turn themselves into animals. Smiling, they said, "Here, eat me." Others turned into water, rivers, trees. Some turned themselves to dirt so we could have a path. We crept toward the edges, clawed and crawled to the top of the world, and there we clung. Instead of a mouth, a woman spoke through a vibrant yellow bill. Sometimes we visited the man on the moon. Sometimes he let us inside his house. Sometimes his transparent, hollow wife would dance. Later, when people asked us, "Where did you come from?" we could only answer, "Water." A whole language comprised of just one word. We walked onto the water. We built houses on the water. We had babies on the water. We sewed clothes made of water with needles made of ice. The night so constant changed us. The planets taught us a vocabulary without any alphabet. The trees began to walk. At night, the ocean glowed green from underneath. Our roofs were made of whale ribs. Our lamps were stone that burned clear oil. And now I've turned my face into this page so we could sit here together again. Thank you.
And last but not least, of course, Patricia Smith.
Wow. As you all know, there is no stronger place for a woman to stand than among the women of Cave Canem and Furious Flower. So I'm very, very thrilled to be here. There are two very short stories I want to tell that kind of led up to Unshuttered. One is when I loved my grandmother. When I was about 4 years old, my grandmother had one of those bodies that's all lap. Yeah, I was always there. And I remember she has two long silvery braids, a very soft voice, and very unlike my mother, who was very stringent. And one night there was a lot of activity in the house. I was about 4. White men running in and out of the house and people screaming at each other. And my grandmother was taken away in the back of a car. And my mother's way of introducing me to the world was to keep me away from it. So instead of telling me that my grandmother had died, my grandmother just never came back. And my mother never said anything to me. The second story is that I knew that my mother was in a gradual cognitive decline, and I knew that she had 2 suitcases of photographs. And so I decided to go to her house, and while she could still tell me who the people were, there were these suitcases of like curl-cornered Polaroids and no identification. And so I got the suitcases, and my husband and I sat there, and we were going through them with her. And there were pictures of her at church fashion shows and pictures of her on vacation that I didn't know she'd gone on. And one picture, there was a little ghost of a little Mary Jane shoe leaving the frame of the picture. And I said, that's my shoe. But we went through one suitcase, and we got through half of the other suitcase. And my husband looked at me, and I looked at him, and wordlessly we were saying, there are no pictures of you in these suitcases. And I said, no, there aren't. And it winds up that my mother had given all of my pictures to my father, and when my father was killed in a robbery, my mother had his apartment cleaned out. So all the pictures of me outside of the one that's on the cover of my book, Life According to Motown, all the pictures of me past that time up until high school were gone. So I felt kind of like I didn't exist before that. And so I'm going to start with another little story that I thought was just mere curiosity. I love tax sales. I love estate sales. I love flea markets. And I would go through and I would collect just all the photos. Sometimes there would be big dusty boxes of photos of old, people from the 19th century, and I would just start collecting them. I didn't care about the quality, white people, black people, everybody. I would collect scraps of cloth, old clothing. I would collect old dusty handkerchiefs and rusted scales from old stores. And just pile my house with these things. And eventually I realized that I was seeing fewer and fewer pictures of African Americans simply because at that time it was very difficult for an African American to have a picture taken. You either had to be very well-to-do or you had to be cataloged as part of someone's household. This is my driver, this is my cook, this is the woman who nurses my children. And so I started to then specialize, just look specifically for those pictures. And I think I've got about 2,000 of them now. Then I saw it as a learning tool, or I thought that's the way that I was seeing it. And so my first year at Cave Canem, I was absolutely terrified of Cave Canem. I'd heard so much about it. I came to be to replace Marilyn Nelson one year while she was establishing Soul Mountain, and I walk into, my first grouping of students, and there was Tracy K. Smith and Ross Gay. I'm like, no, this will never do. But what you gradually find out about Cave Canem is all of those people are one person, and that you are putting aside all of your misconceptions, which come from other places and other people anyway. And that welcoming circle that you walk into, you're not just welcome for that week. You learn that you're welcome for the rest of your life in that circle. I love it. And so one of the first things I did, I brought some of my photographs. And I sent the photographs before the classes started, and I said, everything that you write for me is going to be telling me who these people are. And I can't tell you the word. I should print all of those poems. They were absolutely astounded. Ramika acted up, and I put all the photos on a sheet, and so the names of the people who were writing the photos were next, and she started talking to the photo next to hers, and they developed a whole relationship. It was fantastic. People like Roger Reeves, Antoinette Brim, just amazing work. And so it wound up being, the photos wound up being wonderful as a teaching tool, and yet I was still looking for something, didn't know what I was looking for. This book came together because there were those voices that were resurrected at Cave Canem haunted me, but also I realized that in these photos, I was looking for a grandmother who came home. I was looking for a mother who was satisfied with my color, my voice, my hair, the spread of my nose. I was looking for a father who stayed alive long enough to be alive at this moment. And in those faces, often people ask me, well, those were real people, and how can you infuse these people that you don't know with these voices? And I was looking forward to that conversation. And there are two parts to it. One is everything that we are or have been is now being. There are people in dark rooms right now plotting new ways to take it away. And there's so many of us, like myself, who didn't hear any voices beyond the ones that I lived with. When that screen showed, when Bettina was speaking, that lifeline and that voice and that, hey baby, this is your grandmother, I never heard that. And so, and one of the things that I love about doing programs and being with Ramika is that she represents to me someone who grew up so solidly in that circle of family, and a circle that continues to live and breathe far beyond where she stands. And I always wanted that. And so I learned later on that my fascination with these photos was trying to craft a family for myself, trying to look and say, that looks really like my grandmother. That could be my grandmother. That could be my grandfather. That could be my mother, my father. And so I want to represent the peoples whose lives were kind of clipped, the people who had parents who came up from the South embarrassed and ashamed of where they came from, and kind of left you to find your own way toward a family that would eventually surround you. And that's what these photos became to me. And I'm so anxious for questions, and I'm so happy. I can just feel the strength of these women at my back on this stage, and it's amazing, life-altering thing. I wanted to read because each of these poems is a dramatic monologue or a persona poem. I try to take into consideration. Sometimes there were photography studios in towns, so I looked at what was going on in those towns at that time. I looked at the date, but more than anything else, I looked at the faces and trying to find myself in so many of those faces. But at the end, I wanted all of those people in the book to come together, and I wanted to talk about what they were saying to us. And so I took the first line of each of the poems and then conjured the poem Unshuttered at the end of the book, which is us talking to them from where we are and needing them in the space where we stand today. Unshuttered. You damn us with those glimpses. You, officially composed, gracefully caged, your girdles stifled in your overdue of buttoning and lace, so stiffly staged. A waylaid rage, illuminated, can become such softer fist within the held and holding breath. Instead, the light, engaged with cane, cravats, and corsets that retell the body's mishap, blinds us to the hells that seethe within your stare. You disappear, dim gingerly to fray on a lapel, and leave us with this dogged souvenir, the ache for fictions etched in black and white, our faces stripped by lies of stuttered light. The past has done its awkward work. It rules our now with such a feeble guarantee, while Jesus, azure-eyed, regrets his fool still fixed on northern stars. It hurts to be your scions, sons from sons, your rumored free and distant daughters, floundering in ways that wound. And all you asked for was that we never forget you were considered prey before this dusty chic, or how each day was conjured by your frenzied thirst for dawn. Instead, your desperate stares are now arrayed on shelves of shadow boxes, their warnings gone to sepia and still. We hush your drum and hide behind whatever we've become. When you were straightening your backs for us and fathoming our names, could you have known how much escaping never ends? We must grow canny to the chase, the metronome dispatching of our children, dying prone on streets with names you'd know. The swift eclipse of sons and daughters, days that moan beneath us like the burdened decks of ships, as if we're following some hateful script you prayed we'd never write. Back when you posed and held your breath, waiting to slip in like the clutch of flash. Don't blink. You froze, captured a story that you knew we would need. A story we're just learning how to read. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kave Khanum. Thank you, Furious Flower. Thank you, Renilka. Thank you, Courtney. And thank you so much, Bettina. I love you.
Thank y'all. Listen, as always, there is never enough time. And we want to talk to you, so we'll talk to you in the back. But I'm going to ask our panelists just one question, and maybe, like they said in Bible study, 30 seconds or less, maybe give me your answer. and Robin, we see you there, so we're going to include you too. You all have been doing this hybrid work, as Robin said, this interdisciplinary, multi-genre work. What's the value of doing that kind of work, that's historical research mixed with images, for you or for the readers who encounter it? Bettina, I'm gonna throw to you first, and we'll just go on a line. 30 seconds, and you got a mic.
Oh, is it on? Okay. So the first thing is that it's my job to do research type stuff. Like people assume I'm in English. I'm in a gender, women, and sexuality studies program. It's what my degree is in. So
they make me write things in a particular kind of way, and so I have to sneak the poetry in. That's my answer.
Sneak the poetry in. We love it. Patricia.
Hello? Oh, it is on. Okay. I think a lot of it is I felt like when I would turn the things that happened to you in your past, some of them you pave over, some of them you celebrate, but when I would turn often, there would just be a blank slate, and all that was there were voices, and I needed to find and build the bodies for those voices. So I would feel like, not that I came from Annie Pearl from Alabama and Otis from Arkansas, but that they came from someone, and they came from someone, and they came from someone. And it takes, it's work sometimes to find your family.
Yeah, yeah. Courtney?
Yeah, for me, the hybridity was a method to kind of move away from poetry when I needed to lean on other forms to say what I needed to say. Sometimes a poem couldn't quite come to me, but there was an image that already existed or something that someone had said, a scholar. And so I think of hybridity as a conversation, me kind of inviting other forms in so I could say that there were people before me that did this work, that I'm coming together to help me say what I'm saying now.
I love it. I love it. And Robin, you can close us out.
Yeah, a lot of what the other panelists have said is also true for me with this book and with poems and with other art projects. I think, one of the things I learned at Cafe Canem is to wait and see what the poem wants from you, and not impose my ideas on it. And this book wanted things from me that I just was in no way prepared to give it in terms of research. Like Bettina said, I did a whole PhD on the history of photography so I can understand what I was holding. I just didn't know what it was. I know it was old photographs, but what else besides that? And it was just really important to me that I took my time. I took over 2 decades, but I took my time with it, and I didn't want to impose upon the photographs any projection of my own. That's a falsity, I know, but still, I just wanted to see what it wanted. And also, I just think, I think language is overrated, you guys. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, you know? And I think there's also a particular magic, as you can see in the projects of these women on stage, there's a particular magic when you put text and image together. There is a magic that no one really quite understands how to, over the centuries, how to discuss. So I like that magic.
Love it. Thank you. To close us out, Dante Michaud, the Director of Programs for Cave Canem, has a few announcements for us, but we thank you all so much. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to take a little time to give some acknowledgements. On behalf of Cave Canem, I want to take time to acknowledge those who donate to the organization, which helps us provide programs like this to you. We're very grateful that this program in part is supported by private funds from the Amazon Literary Partnership Poetry Fund in partnership with the Academy of American Poets, the Ford Foundation, the Hawthornden Foundation, the Hyde and Watson Foundation, Lannan Foundation, the Mellon Foundation, the Poetry Foundation, the Rona Jaffe Foundation, and the Sherman Foundation. We are grateful to Pro Bono ASL for our interpreters, Rory Burden and Rodney LeBon, who helped make this event more accessible. Special thanks always to Cave Canem's co-founders, Toy Derricott and Cornelius Eady. To our staff, especially April Rose, who's our Readings and Programs Manager, and the Board of Directors, including our President, Tyemba Jess. If you are not already on our mailing list, please be sure to visit the website cavecanempoets.org and sign up. and you can keep abreast of all of the programs that we're doing in support of Black poets and poetry. We also look forward to you joining us tomorrow at 10:35 a.m. for Cave Canem and the Importance of the Black Literary Archive, which is featuring Tyemba Jess, Nancy Kuehl, Angela D. Stewart, and Lisa Willis, our executive director, moderated by our very distinguished archivist, Jess C. Neal. I'm going to ask all of you to stay seated until we get the writers out to the book signing table, at which time they will talk to you and sign your books. And we wish you a very pleasant rest of your day.